Before Hansel and Gretel became a bedtime story, it belonged to a world ruled by hunger. Food shortages were common, winters were long, and famine was not an exception, but an expectation. Entire villages could be pushed to the edge of extinction by a single failed harvest. In this world, love did not always come first. Survival did. Families counted mouths the way merchants counted coins. Children were blessings, but they were also burdens. Small bodies that required food a household might not have. When cupboards emptied and hope thinned, desperation spoke more loudly than compassion. Moral rules bent under the weight of hunger. This is where the story truly begins. Not with magic, but with calculation. In the earliest versions of the tale, it is the children's own mother who suggests abandoning them. She does not rage or weep. She reasons. Her decision reflects a terrifying truth of the time. Even parents could become dangerous when survival was at stake. For a child listener, this idea was more frightening than any monster. It suggested that love was conditional, that protection could be withdrawn, that safety was fragile. The first horror of Hansel and Gretel is not the witch. It is the betrayal of trust inside the home. The lie of safety. Home is supposed to be a place of protection. In Hansel and Gretel, it becomes the place where danger is planned. The parent's choice teaches a brutal lesson. Authority does not always mean safety. Adults can fail, promises can break. What makes this betrayal especially disturbing is how ordinary it is. There is no violence in the home, no shouting, no visible cruelty. The decision to abandon the children is made quietly, almost politely, as if discussing the weather. This calmness suggests that such choices were not unthinkable in desperate times. They were imaginable, even rational. When Hansel and Gretel are led into the forest, they are not running from monsters. They are walking beside them, holding their hands. The danger does not lurk in shadows. It smiles and reassures them that everything will be fine. For children hearing this story centuries ago, the message was chilling. Obedience does not guarantee protection. Sometimes, danger wears a familiar face. Sometimes, love fails. The forest that erases. The forest in Hansel and Gretel is not enchanted. It is indifferent. In medieval Europe, forests were lawless spaces where people vanished. There were no maps, no rescue parties, and no protection once the village disappeared behind the trees. To be lost in the forest was to be erased from society. No laws applied. No one heard screams. Nature did not care whether you were innocent. The forest represents a world without rules. Paths vanish. Landmarks fail. Even the sun struggles to guide the lost. Once abandoned, the children are stripped of society's protection and reduced to instinct. Hansel's breadcrumbs symbolize fragile hope. They are a child's solution to an adult problem. Birds consume them easily, showing how quickly hope can disappear when the world is hostile. When the crumbs are gone, the children are not just lost, they are claimed. The forest does not attack, it waits. Like hunger, it only has to endure. Hunger made flesh. The candy house is not a miracle, it is a warning. To modern readers, it seems whimsical. To its original audience, it would have been deeply unsettling. Sugar was rare, expensive, and associated with wealth. A house made of food represented impossible abundance, something so excessive it could only exist as a lie. The house tempts not just the body, but the mind. It suggests that suffering is over, that effort is no longer required. For starving children, this illusion is irresistible. The witch does not hunt. She does not chase or threaten. She understands hunger better than anyone. She offers warmth, shelter, and food, the very things the children were denied by their parents. In this way, the witch becomes a distorted reflection of motherhood. She feeds children, she houses them, she watches their bodies closely. But her care is false, driven by consumption rather than protection. This inversion makes her terrifying. She is nurture-turned predatory. The cage, Hansel's imprisonment, is one of the darkest images in folklore. He is locked in a cage, reduced from a child to livestock. His body is inspected daily, measured not by health or happiness, but by weight. Cannibalism was not merely a fantasy in times of famine. It was a whispered fear, sometimes a reality. The witch embodies this fear completely. She is hunger stripped of humanity. Hansel's clever trick, offering a bone instead of his finger, shows that intelligence is his only weapon. Strength is useless. Innocence is irrelevant. Survival depends on deception. Forced complicity. Gretel's role is quieter, but equally horrifying. She is not caged. She is controlled. Forced to cook, clean, and obey, she becomes part of the art system meant to destroy her brother. This reflects a cruel truth children often learn early. Obedience can keep you alive, but it can also trap you. Gretel must choose her moment carefully. Open rebellion would mean death. The story teaches patience, observation, and restraint, not virtues of childhood, but tools of survival. Fire as salvation. There is no rescue in Hansel and Gretel. No adult arrives to correct the wrong. No higher power intervenes. The responsibility falls entirely on the children. This absence is deliberate. The story teaches that waiting to be saved is dangerous. Survival belongs to those who act. When Gretel pushes the witch into the oven, the act is swift and merciless. Fire consumes the predator. Burning alive was one of the most feared deaths of the era, and the audience would have felt its weight immediately. The story does not pause to question the morality of the act. There is no guilt, no mourning, no hesitation. Survival overrides innocence. Evil is destroyed, and the tale moves forward. In this moment, Gretel ceases to be a child in the traditional sense. She becomes an agent of her own survival, hardened by necessity. Reward without healing. After the witch's death, the children take her treasures. They do not mourn, they do not hesitate. Gold, jewels, and food are gathered quickly, almost mechanically. Survival has taught them not to question fortune. In fairy tales, wealth often symbolizes justice. Here, it feels more like compensation. The world has taken safety, innocence, and trust from the children. Wealth cannot restore those things, but it can prevent further suffering. When they return home, the story conveniently removes the source of betrayal. The cruel parent is dead. The father is repentant. Order is restored. But the story does not address healing. It does not show apologies, conversations, or forgiveness. Trauma is invisible. Survival is enough. This silence reflects a harsh reality of the past. Suffering was common, and recovery was a luxury few could afford. The final warning. At its core, Hansel and Gretel is not about witches or magic. It is about a world that devours the unprepared. It teaches children that appearances deceive, authority can fail, and survival has a cost. The tale does not promise justice. It promises knowledge. It warns that hunger changes people, that beauty can be bait, that obedience is not always rewarded, and that innocence alone will not save you. The story endures because it tells an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, to live, children must become cautious, watchful, and hard before they are ready. This is the dark heart of Hansel and Gretel, not a fairy tale, a warning. Why the darkness remains. The reason this story still unsettles modern audiences is because its fears have not vanished. Hunger may look different now, but desperation remains. Neglect still exists. Predators still hide behind kindness. The forest may no longer be literal, but children are still lost in systems that fail them: poverty, abuse, abandonment. The candy house has changed its shape, but temptation and deception remain powerful forces. Hansel and Gretel survives because it speaks to something ancient and enduring: the fear of being abandoned in a world that does not care whether you live or die. It also speaks to resilience. The children endure not because they are pure, but because they adapt. That truth is uncomfortable, and that is why the story is still told. A story meant to be remembered. Fairy tales, like Hansel and Gretel, were not created to soothe children. They were created to prepare them. They warned young listeners to be cautious of strangers, skeptical of appearances, and aware that adults could be wrong. They taught that cleverness could mean survival, and that fear was sometimes justified. In this sense, the darkness of Hansel and Gretel is not accidental. It is purposeful. The story does not promise a gentle world. It promises knowledge. And knowledge in a dangerous world was the greatest protection of all. And now, the real story of Hansel and Gretel. There once lived, at the edge of a vast and silent forest, a poor woodcutter with his 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and the girl Gretel. Their house was small, their walls thin, and hunger was a constant presence, sitting at the table with them, lying beside them at night, whispering fear into every quiet moment. Food had grown scarce across the land. Crops failed. Bread became thinner each week. The woodcutter worked from dawn until nightfall, yet still there was never enough. The children often went to bed with empty stomachs, listening to their parents speak in low, anxious voices by the fire. One night, when the moon hung pale above the trees, Hansel lay awake and heard his mother speaking. "There is not enough for all 4 of us," she said. "If we keep the children, we will all starve. Tomorrow we must take them deep into the forest and leave them there. They will not find their way back." The father groaned and covered his face. "How can I abandon my own children?" "We have no choice," the mother replied. "Better 2 perish than all 4. Hansel felt his heart pound, but he did not cry out. When the house fell silent, he crept outside and gathered small white stones that glimmered faintly in the moonlight. He filled his pockets and returned to bed. The next morning, the parents led Hansel and Gretel into the forest. They walked farther than they ever had before, until the trees grew thick and the light dimmed. At last, the parents made a fire and told the children to sit and wait while they gathered wood. Hansel dropped his stones along the way. When night fell and the fire burned low, the children realized they were alone. Gretel began to cry, but Hansel took her hand. "Wait," he said. When the moon rose, the stones shone like stars upon the ground. The children followed them home. The father wept with relief when he saw them. The mother turned away, but hunger does not soften its grip. Not long after, food ran out again. Once more, the mother insisted the children must be abandoned. This time, she locked the door at night so Hansel could not gather stones. All he managed to save was a piece of dry bread, which he crumbled along the path as they walked into the forest. Birds followed behind them. When the parents left them again and night fell, the children searched for the crumbs, but they were gone. The birds had eaten every last one. They wandered for days through the forest, weak with hunger and fear. The trees seemed endless, the silence heavy. At last, when Gretel could hardly walk, they saw something strange ahead. A small house stood in a clearing. Its roof was made of cake, its walls were bread, its windows were clear sugar. Starving beyond caution, the children broke off pieces and ate. Then the door opened, and old woman stepped out, leaning on a cane, smiling gently. She spoke kindly and invited them inside, offering warm food and soft beds. Exhausted and trusting, the children followed her, but the woman was a witch. As soon as they were inside, her kindness vanished. She seized Hansel and locked him in a small cage. She forced Gretel to work like a servant, cooking and cleaning. The witch intended to eat Hansel, but she wanted him fat first. Each day she fed him and felt his finger to see if he had grown plump. Hansel, clever despite his fear, held out a small bone instead. The witch was nearly blind and believed he was still too thin. Days turned into weeks. Hansel grew weaker. Gretel watched in silence, waiting, thinking. At last, the witch grew impatient. "Heat the oven," she ordered Gretel. "We will bake bread." When the oven roared with fire, the witch said, "Climb inside and see if it is hot enough." Gretel pretended not to understand. Furious, the witch bent down and stuck her head inside the oven. Gretel pushed her in and slammed the door shut. The witch screamed, then fell silent. The children freed Hansel and searched the house. They found chests filled with pearls, gold, and precious stones. They filled their pockets and fled into the forest. After many days, they found their way home. Their mother had died while they were gone. Their father welcomed them with tears. With the treasure, they never went hungry again. And Hansel and Gretel lived on, wiser than children should ever have to be.